Well, it looks like the hallway's empty and everyone who's going to come is here. So let's go ahead and get started. How's everyone doing? This is the second day of the conference, and then we'll ask you that same question tomorrow after the party. And we typically track how the answers change through the week. So hopefully everyone's doing real well this morning. I guess it's this afternoon now. My name's Jeff Mills, and I'm Tableau's Director of Analytics. I work in our IT department, and I'm in charge of running Tableau at Tableau. We deploy Tableau to our company and run our business on that platform. We give Tableau Desktop to every single employee, and we run Tableau Server both here in the United States as well as in London and Singapore. And so we're going to talk to you guys a little bit about the things that we've learned and some of the best practices that I find when deploying and monitoring and running this platform. You guys can ask questions sort of whenever you want. I'm pretty flexible in that regard. And I want to share with you a little bit around the decisions that we made and the reasons why we made some of those decisions with our deployment, and give you the thought process behind that so that when you go back, you can evaluate your requirements and see if those are decisions that you would make in the same way or in different ways. And so this will definitely not be a session on all of the different ways to deploy Tableau. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not sure if it is coming up in the presentation, but can you share the information about how many users and what kind of load?
You bet. Yeah, we're going to get into some pretty decent detail on what it actually takes to run this thing. So let's take a look at that agenda. I run an on-premise deployment. We'll talk a little bit around how we do monitoring at Tableau. I think as you begin to deploy a platform like Tableau within the organization, it's very important to intelligently monitor that solution. We'll talk about some of the customizations and the APIs that we're leveraging within Tableau. Version 10.0 as well as version 10.1 extended those APIs in some really meaningful ways, and I'll share with you how we're thinking about taking advantage of those in one area where we already are. We'll talk about what we provide to the organization. We provide data to the organization and empower the users. We give every employee Tableau Desktop. And so if they don't have simple and easy to understand data, we've given them a tool with absolutely no guideposts on how to actually make sense of that. This is a conversation that I have with customers on a pretty regular basis around whether or not you charge back with Tableau or whether or not it's a service provided by IT. And what I want to do is examine the logic behind that. I will share what we do. I will also share what I've seen as pros and cons and some smart ways to do that. This is probably the area where I'm going to invite you to disagree with me. Everywhere else, I'd like your blind adherence to what we're talking about, so that'll be great. But no, we'll talk a little bit about this topic and explore it just a little bit further, and then open it up to some more formal Q&A. So let's talk just a little bit about what we're trying to accomplish and what I'm trying to accomplish at Tableau. So we believe in enabling our end users to ask and answer a question themselves within the business. Okay, so if we take a look at what is traditionally an initiating act within an organization that involves data, it's typically somebody asking a question and wanting data to inform that answer, right? And so a lot of times in these organizations, what happens is that when somebody comes to like a team like mine with a question, we will respond with a dashboard or a visualization or a report. And when we first kicked off the analytics team at Tableau, we did this, and we were really good at it. And then when we would deliver it to the business, they'd say, well, that's great, but what about this, 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 and this? And I was like, okay, let me go back. And it only took about 3.5 weeks for us to get sort of unrecoverably behind. Because our business was incredibly curious, and so something had to give in that equation, and what was to be given wasn't asking the organization to ask fewer questions, right? And so we actually found that we needed to deliver something else to the business. So they still ask lots of questions, but what we deliver to them is data, and we empower them with that data. So we use something in Tableau called data server. It's over here in the lower right-hand corner. It's where my team can can build data connections for people and host those on Tableau's server. And so then when my users come in, they can open up Tableau Desktop in that full flexible experience. And instead of picking SQL Server when they connect to data, they pick Tableau Server. And then they pick the data sources that we've provided. And the connect to data dialog, these joining of the tables together, is not even presented to that user. Okay, so we're providing something different to the business. We're providing them syndicated data. Okay, a couple of things to keep in mind here is that this is an evolving model. Right? I can make changes to this, and my end users don't know. My end users will also ask, hey, can you include partner information? Can you include geographic or territory information for our sales team? And we'll bring those in. Now, I'll just describe a little bit about how we decided what to build, right? Because if then we agree that this is the thing to deliver, we then have to decide, well, where do we start? And I will encourage you, the wrong place to start is to ask the users what they want. The right place to start is, in my opinion, the database. I have users in my organization right now connecting to the database and asking questions and running reports. We all have usage information of the questions the organization is asking. And so what we did was we took 3 weeks of the SQL Server profile query traces, and we brought that text file into Tableau and did a simple cohort analysis. If anyone's from the retail space, it's like a market basket analysis, but for your tables and your columns. And we found that there was a frequency of people using tables together and using columns together, and that's where we started. Right? The business was already telling me what questions they were asking of the business. They were just doing it via queries. And so if I can mine those, I have a great place to start. And so then I go out and I say, all right, I've built this data source that contains 80% of the queries that the company asks. What do you think of it? And that's when we engaged the business. And we went through a month cycle of them saying, well, that doesn't make any sense, and this makes a lot of sense. Add this thing, take this thing away. And now we've got this data source. This one is real. It's connected to SQL Server, which has Salesforce data in it. And it's queried 85,000 times a week. Right? Each one of those queries is a query that didn't get the joins wrong. Right? It's 85,000 queries that are optimized on the back end because I know what structures I need to support. Right? And so we are now providing something different. Remember, the initiating act is the same. The business user is asking a question, or even in IT, we're asking a question. And then it is what gets provided by a team like mine, and that is I'm trying to empower the organization with data. So let's go ahead and move on. So I'm going to get pretty detailed about what we do at Tableau. Open up the book and let you guys take a peek. We're going to build from the bottom to the top, so don't try to consume this all at once. I'll walk you through it. We have loads and loads of data sources here in the lower left-hand corner that we use at Tableau. Our primary systems of record are NetSuite, Salesforce, and Eloqua. And then everything else, whether it's Splunk, whether it's ServiceNow, whether it's Workday, whether it's Jive, whether it's Taleo. We actually, I think at last count, it was 295 applications our IT department's supporting. Each one of them generates data, and as no surprise to those in the room, none of their reporting is good enough for us. And so we want to have access to that data. Now those data sources need to get turned into things Tableau can connect to. Right? So our Salesforce data we replicate into a SQL Server. We're starting to put all of our ServiceNow data into Redshift. Right? And so we want to be able, the goal here in this effort is how do we make all of these data sources, who some have connectors from Tableau and some don't. How do we make them connectable to Tableau? So that's one of the things that we focus on. We use the data extract API. We use the web data connector. We'll also use tools like Alteryx to be able to go after that data and then make it connectable for our users. Now, moving up, our primary data warehouse is SQL Server. And that's where we're putting most of the stuff that we want to be able to ask lots of questions of and that we've sort of codified as important to the business. We then use SQL Server's distribution technology to put that data into 4 distinct databases. Okay? One is Alpo, and I should do this. Alpo is what we call our Tableau server. It's also what we call our database, which isn't confusing at all. Right? So everything's Alpo, and so when Alpo is slow or fast, that's super not helpful. Right? So we've got 4 Alpo databases. AlpoDB, this is the primary one that everybody uses. We have a completely separate installation for, it's called Alpo Dev. It is for just our development team. They are rather abusive to the software, and they are rather abusive to the database and their testing and their curiosity in building new products. So we've given them their own environment. We also replicate the data into a data center in London and into a data center in Singapore. We are doing this because we have grown as a global company and want to bring the data closer to the user. And then on top of each one of these databases sits a production Tableau server. Right? So here's Alpo A. This is our primary one. If you're going to ask anyone what they connect to, it's Alpo. Alpo Dev, again, we let them do whatever they want, and we go forward that way. Alpo UK and Alpo SG are the ones that those offices in EMEA and Asia Pacific use on a regular basis. Okay. Next, we have special projects on Alpo that we synchronize globally. Okay, so for example, our quota dashboards, our development bug count, some of our travel and entertainment expense dashboards. Those are things we want all of the regions to see. So what we do is we use tab command to pull down all of the workbooks from that project. Then we use the new document API to open the XML of that workbook and point it to the geographically specific database. So we look for all AlpoDB in the XML and change it to alpo-uk.db, and then we use the publish command via tab command to put all of those things back up. Okay? That used to be unsupported. And in 10.1 with the new document API, you can now write a small little Python program to do that. And that's what we're doing internally. Okay? So we've got the geo-replication working. I get asked about geo-replication all the time. The number one qualifier to doing this is if you're replicating the data as well. You will gain almost nothing by bringing a Tableau server closer to someone and then asking it to phone home to the database. You will either pay that penalty in dashboard rendering times, or you will pay that penalty in your extracts refreshing at a really slow rate. Okay, so if you want to go geo, you want to follow the rule that Tableau server and the database are cohabitated. That's the most performant way in which to deploy Tableau server. Okay, so like I said, Alpo A is our main deal, so we're going to peel that back even further. I'm going to walk you through this. On top, this is what the configuration screen for Alpo A looks like. You're going to have full access to these slides afterwards, as well as the audio as part of the conference. So just keep that in mind. There's a big decision that we made earlier, and I'll show you this in the monitoring section. The left 3 servers do everything but backgrounder processing. The right 3 servers do only backgrounder processing. Okay? And I'll show you in the resource utilization why that matters. But just think of the Tableau server as having really 2 major jobs: serving up visualizations to people and keeping that data fresh and emails delivered to people. Right? Backgrounders refresh your extracts, and they do the subscriptions and they do the emailing. And some of the things you saw in the keynote, potentially alerts, will be a backgrounder task. Everything else is in service to the end user to provide them their dashboard. Right? VizQL issues the query and draws the picture. The cache server sees if we already have that picture and serve that up to the user. The application service is for actually drawing the web page for people. Right? So it does everything in service of that request, and then the backgrounder is in service of the data, not the user. It's a real simple way to think about it. Okay? We run 16 cores on each node, and we have 6 of those, so we have 96 cores in production. We serve 400,000 visualizations a week, and we are overbuilt. We are a release validation tool for our development team, and so before any of you get access to software, it's run on Alpo for 48 hours. My team also holds the right to call a ship blocker, and we can stop a release if we don't think it's of quality in production at the load that we're running. Okay, and we've done that. 10.1 was a week late because we found something at the last minute and we pulled it back, which is of benefit, I think, to everybody, including us running a Tableau server. Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, of course, right? Now, we have 400 gig of RAM, or 400 gig of onboard SSD. These are physical hosts, 256 gig of RAM. I just bought them from Dell, and they were about $11,000 a piece. All right, so we're going to get real specific about running this platform. Now, when I go out and I talk to customers, I am almost always really surprised at how few are doing this following strategy. We have another Tableau server up and running. This one's virtual. And it's deployed in a similar way, just a little bit smaller. And it's called Alpo B. It gets a restore from Alpo A every night, but it is up and running. It is running the Active Directory sync, so all the users are in there. The extracts are refreshing. It doesn't send subscriptions, of course, because we don't want 2 of those. But it's up, running, and hot. And if we need to fail over, Alpo B is available. Now, I've run our deployment through our legal team, and this strategy is in full compliance with our EULA. Because when you buy Tableau server, you get 1 prod and 2 non-prod instances. The thing that determines whether it's production or not production is, are you sending traffic to it? And so we use this for disaster recovery. We also use this for business continuity during maintenance windows. Right? We upgrade probably once a week. And so what happens is we will go into the F5 load balancer and change the resource pool from Alpo A to Alpo B. Everyone then, when they type in Alpo, goes to Alpo B. The data is up to date because those extracts are running. We upgrade Alpo A and then we come back. All right, so I don't have any service interruption during that upgrade. And that's incredibly important to the business. The reason it's smaller is our maintenance windows are off peak load. Right? Actually, it was about a year ago. There was a heavy metals refining company 2 blocks from our dev office. The fire it caught on fire. And the fire got so hot that it melted the fiber that was this data supply into our development office. That happened to be where we located Alpo A. And so we had Alpo B in a completely different geography and was on that for 2 days while we had internet and data restored back to the building. They are both now in data centers that shouldn't have those issues. But it's one of those things that I'm really happy I had Alpo B. Okay? When you flip over to Alpo B, you're not directing traffic to Alpo A, thus it's non-production. Right? And so this is one of those ways in which you can, as Tableau becomes more mission critical in your organization, you then need to be able to provide that continuity to the business. The one thing that we do is we turn off the right to publish to Alpo B, because it takes a backup from Alpo A. Because what will happen if somebody in that maintenance window publishes, that's a one-way sync. Right? And so it won't ever make it back to Alpo A. And so if someone publishes during a maintenance window, they would lose their work. And so we just don't allow that scenario. Again, they're mostly off hours. We send out a email notification, and they won't even be given the right to publish. So that's how we get around that. Okay. Now, how many people have connected to the repository in Tableau Server? Okay. How many people looked at the admin views? All right, so those are connected to the repository as well. All right, so you can use those. You can also build your own. And I'll show you some of the ones that we've built and be able to share those with you. But I want to also be really clear that if you're only looking at the Tableau repository to understand the health of your server, you are missing half of the equation. You also need to be monitoring the hosts. Right? How are the actual servers performing as well as the application is performing? Okay? So we use an open source tool called Zabbix to do our server monitoring. I honestly don't care which one you use. The next picture I'm going to show you is one that we provide for free if you don't have anything. But I think this is incredibly important that you not only understand sort of the hardware server health side of the equation, but also the Tableau server side of the equation. Can anyone guess which machines are the backgrounders and which machines are the Viz servers? Yeah, the bottom's absolutely the backgrounders, right? So notice this is CPU by host over time. This was from about 3 weeks ago, September 30th. Notice this is end of quarter. That's our end of quarter spike. And then this is when finance came in and started doing their reporting for the quarter end. And so what we have here, I think, is a pretty healthy view here. Now, backgrounders are almost always close to 100%. There's another metric you should care about as to whether or not you want to add backgrounders, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Okay? So backgrounders are designed to use as much resource as possible to finish that extract refresh as fast as possible. And so this is where that resource contention between backgrounders and VizQL can happen. Okay, Russ, you had a question.
Have you intentionally distributed your background tasks so it's pretty even the whole way?
So the question is have I intentionally distributed my background tasks so that it's even? Not really. We have subscription. We have sort of we have time periods throughout the day. We find that it sort of doesn't matter, right? We have some like probably 2-hour increments throughout the day, and then the backgrounder and the gateway does a pretty decent job of spreading those out across the load. So we're actually doing nothing behind the scenes to get this evenness. So great question. So the backgrounders, I'm fine with them running this hot. My VizQL servers, my threshold's around 65–70%, and that's when we start looking at optimizations or potentially expansion. Okay. Now, if you don't have a monitoring tool, this is effectively the same visualization built off of Tabmon. This is a tool our development team built that is a performance counter for the servers. It is available on our website as well as Tableau's GitHub account. And I would encourage you to do that. Like I said, I do not care how you monitor your Tableau servers, but I care that you do, right? Okay, next, how many people have opened the task manager and seen like a gajillion processes running? All right, because there's a bunch of stuff going on. There's really 3 that you should care about when it comes to resourcing and monitoring. Everything else is sort of irrelevant, okay? So number 1 is the vizql.exe. Right, that VizQL process does lots of stuff for us. It issues the queries, it paints the pictures, it assembles the tiles to give you a dashboard on the web. So VizQL is one that you want to manage too. The second one is TDE server. So that is, TDE server is the extract engine. It's the data engine. It's that thing that's going to be hyper soon, right? That is effectively a small little database running on Tableau server. And so it, in fact, needs resources to handle that. And then last is the backgrounders, okay? Everything else sort of doesn't do much. They're not that resource intensive. Those are the 3 that I actually care about, okay? So that when you're managing and looking at those processes and how much resource they're using, those are the ones that you should care about. Like I said, there's other stuff. This was actually a time when this was an older version where we actually hadn't made improvements to Postgres, so that's why you're seeing that there. But pretty much everything is just real small layers on this cake, and it's VizQL, it's the data engine, and it's the backgrounders. You manage to those, you got a pretty healthy environment. Okay. Now, this is available via Tableau, via our website. This is something we built on top of Zabbix. So we could share it, but it wouldn't be of value to you. Anything you're using for resource monitoring, okay? This is one of the ways in which we look at performance, and it's overall view performance, okay? This is something that can be derived directly out of the repository, and I'll tell you, my users do not care about any of the complexity I just told you about. They just care if their dashboard is slow, right? And so what I'm focused on in this situation is I want to see change over time. Right? So if I see a workbook that actually got 20% slower, those are the ones that I'll actually dig into. This one's pretty steady Eddie. which is fine by me. And then, of course, we could always engage to drive this average line down. But those are the kinds of things that I'm looking at for view performance is changes. Did somebody publish something? Did the database get a view rebuilt and its index is not replaced? Right? Those are the kinds of things that I can tell from here. Now, what we do as our team is we want to manage the health of our Tableau server. We've talked about this, right? I want my end users to have a great experience. But here's the thing. I let everyone in the organization publish at least to one project within Tableau and Tableau server. All right? So one of the things that we do is we lay over view performance and usage to proactively engage with our users. If you publish a workbook to Alpo and you get more than 100 people to use it, and it takes longer than 20 seconds to render, we make you an appointment for Alpo Doctor, which is modeled after Tableau Doctor, on Thursday afternoons, and we sit down and find out ways in which to optimize the workbook or the database. Because I've got people that are using my technology, and I've got people that are building content people want to use, and none of us want that experience to be slow. Right? And so we'll proactively engage in that regard. Now, if somebody publishes something that's slow and gets 3 views in a week, I sort of don't care. Right? And so it's that usage, it's that end user experience plus a usage threshold that allows me to proactively engage. And when I reach out to them, they can oftentimes say like, yeah, I saw it was slow, but I didn't know where to ask for help. Right? And so then we get them into the enablement programs that we're running so that we can help them. Okay? Now, this is a view that's available via my team. It's how we look at backgrounders. So all of the tasks that are running over here, these are real. These are the dates. Again, I put my presentation together a couple of weeks ago. And each blue dot represents an extract refresh. And every red X shows me an extract refresh that is unsuccessful. This is how I tell if we break things in upgrades. This is how I tell if our Splunk connector or our Splunk instance has changed. All right. We actually do have some issues with Splunk from time to time. And what I'm looking for visually is a line down the center of failed extracts. If I see that, now I know I've got a system issue. If I see a lot of red X's left to right, I know I have a data source issue. And so very quickly I can look at tons of data about the extract refreshes and know, do I have a system issue or do I have a data source issue? This is an upgrade, and we actually ended up killing a bunch of processes as we turned the machine off. Right? And then the next cycle they came back, and I'm fine with that. Right? Now, we talk about, now you noticed backgrounders were at 100%, or they were up there, right? Well, what do we then care about? Right? And that is how long it takes for those backgrounder tasks to happen. And then more importantly, I look at subscriptions. So over here on the y-axis is average subscription delay. On the x-axis, I have each day. And I can see, is that growing? So if I see my backgrounders at 100% and I see the delays growing, that's a grow the backgrounder conclusion. If I see them at 100% and my extracts are getting delivered pretty much on time or within a couple of minutes, then I'm healthy. Then those boxes are humming and they're doing what I want. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking at. These are built directly off of the repository. My team publishes all of the things that they build to our Tableau server admin community on our website. We also will publish things to GitHub. And so anything my team builds, I've instructed them to make customer-facing off of standard deployments. So this is buildable directly by connecting to the repository. We put out a TWB file, an unpackaged workbook for all of these admin views. And you'll open it up. It will appear broken. And it'll say, you can't connect to Jeff's repository. What's the login for yours? You plug in your username and password and where your repository is, and the entire workbook will populate with your server's data. Okay? So that's a tool we've tried to make available to folks. If you need help finding it, let me know. But it's Tableau Server Admins Community. It's a little subgroup, and it's right there. Okay? So those are the kinds of things that we're trying to do there. Okay. Let's keep on moving. Remember we talked about providing data to people, right? Well, some of the data we don't have connectors to, right? And so Tableau has made the steps of providing like a web data connector or the data extract API to allow you to actually create connections or create data that you can then use inside of Tableau. One of those use cases was Taleo. We use Taleo internally for recruiting, for hiring, right? And one of the things that we found is that the recruiting data never made the data warehousing team's priority list of things that were going to get done. It always was below the cut line, right? And so we're like, well, hold on. We've got a way to kind of quick and dirty go after this data. And so we used the data extract API. Initially, we dumped it into a SQL server, but we don't do that anymore. And so this little Java program we wrote that leverages the data extract API generates a Tableau data extract, and then we publish that to Alpo systematically. Okay? And so now my users, when they open up Tableau Desktop in recruiting, they can say connect to data, connect to Tableau server, Taleo data. We just skipped the database. And we are now using that Tableau as that data platform. Okay? The code for this is available on GitHub if any of you are running Taleo. Okay? The next thing that we did is so then the recruiting managers were able to see this information. And then we leveraged the groups and security of Tableau server to do row-level security so that we have a table that says, I'm Jeff Mills, the hiring manager. Here's my requisition IDs. And we can match that up with the applicants for those requisition IDs and do a simple Boolean check to say what can Jeff see and not see. So when I connect to the data, I can see all of the applicants in my pool. And it's changed that conversation with my recruiter. Right? They pulled someone out of the process that I was like, I actually want to talk to that person. Right? And so we both have access to that data. And it's a place we didn't have access to data before. Additionally, we have a lot of content on Alpo. So around 7,000 workbooks and 30,000 views. And when a new employee comes to Tableau, their question would be, well, what do I look at? What do I see on Tableau server? And so this is a picture from our one login SAML provider of all the applications inside of Tableau. I took this yesterday. And right in the middle, conveniently, because I'm in charge of this, is this thing we call My Alpo. And it's a portal that we built for our users to be able to quickly find their content and search. And I'm going to actually show it to you here in a second. We use the REST APIs, we use the document APIs, and all of this is documented on a 3-part blog post as well as GitHub on how to build something like this for yourself. And so what we do is when people come in, that we give them their recent views, so we're querying the repository for their usage. We're then using a get command to pull the thumbnails and constructing those in here. Over here are all of the published data sources that we have. And notice I'll show you what these do. I'm going to actually log you into this. And then we have favorite views down here. So if you hit the little star, it automatically comes into the portal. And so my idea here was that I want to get people in and out, get them their content, and move on. Now at the bottom of the fold, we actually used R to build a model to recommend information to people. Right? So what was missing for us was this element of discovery. It's like I want to discover new content. What are people in my department using that are popular? What's the average change week to week in those things? And each one of these are parameters that drop down. I can see what's the most popular in sales, what's trending, what's hot. We sort of took a Pandora approach to say, here's the thing you're looking at all the time. And given some basic criteria of who and what type of content and the data source, we're able to say you will probably like these visualizations as well. And so it's a great way to get people access to information that they need. The beauty of all of this is because I logged in with the same way that I log into Tableau server, I only surface requests that people have access to. So they can't be like, oh, what does the executive team look at? Right? It doesn't show up in the results. That's a fun button now, isn't it? So with that in mind, let's go take a look at this thing. So I'm actually going to log you into My Alpo, because I think it's pretty sweet. And I'll show you one of the things that when I go talk to customers, most don't know exists. Okay? So we talk about publishing those data sources to Tableau server. Right? So here's all our apps. Come on, log me into one login. Sign in error. Of course there is. Okay. So this is all the stuff I used to look at. This is for real. It's my Alpo connected here. And what we're going to do is over here on the right-hand side, is we can create a brand new visualization. Did anyone know that you can actually take a published data source and build a workbook from scratch? Right? Most of the company didn't know that. So up here it says Alpo whack author new workbook whack sales opportunity. It's a brand new workbook up on Tableau server without using Tableau desktop. And then I can come out here and build. And so some of the things that you saw at Devs on Stage in the keynote, we're going to continue to get that desktop parity on the web. And so now I actually can enable people to do this type of work directly inside their browser. I use this on my iPad a ton because I'll have a question, I'm on the road, my laptop's off and in my backpack, and I just want to ask a transient question. And I'm going to throw that analysis away, but I just want to know. And so that we had this, actually, it happened at dinner last night. Someone was like, how many customers are involved in the not-for-profit free Tableau program? I was like, we have that data. And so we answered that right in front of each other, and I threw it away. Right? We just wanted to know that number. So it's a really cool thing that you can do with published data sources. And then those published data sources also contain, of course, all of the metadata that you want to provide. Right? So this is how we do sales pipeline. And this is absolutely production, so this is as far as I'm going to go with this data. But we're leveraging almost every API that Tableau provides. And so that's what one of the benefits of that project was as well. So if you have questions about the APIs, we've used them. Okay? All right. So let's go ahead and jump back in. I always love showing real stuff. So we talk about data as a service. And this is what it looks like. So we take the complexity out of the mix up here in the top. And when someone connects, it's connect to data, Tableau server, pick the data source and go. Right? It's gonna be one of the most used features now within our environment. And then, of course, I can go back to the DBA team and say, all right, this gets used a lot. This structure is important. What can we do to optimize it? And then we use their expertise to help drive efficiencies into the database for questions we know are going to get asked. Okay? The other thing that we do, and again, we go after data that's not in our warehouse, and we use Alteryx. All right, so this is a real workflow that we built to actually get against some financial data. That's why it's a little blurry. And it's bringing in stuff from Anaplan, Salesforce.com, and NetSuite, all together into a sales planning finance data source. Right? We want to know, we're going to give people territories in a couple of months. And so we want to know, are they equal? How have those territories performed in the past? Do some territories pay their Tableau bills faster or slower, right? Because we want to make sure that every employee at Tableau has an equal opportunity at success, and we also want to make sure that we're serving our customers in the best way possible. If we give a rep too big of a territory, you'll probably never hear from them. Some of you are probably okay with that. But we want to make sure that we're providing the best service to you guys as well. So that's what this is being used for. Now, I've given that to around 35 people within the organization. They're off building their workflows. They know their data. I don't need to know their data, but I have a role in this. And that role is, you're going to want to schedule that. So we use the Alteryx server for that, and then we monitor. Notice the trend here on how we like to monitor repetitive tasks. We're able to see which workflows are successful, which ones aren't, and then we actually can subscribe. 10.1 provided conditional subscriptions. So if somebody gets a status 2, which is a failure, we have signed that user up to receive that dashboard so they can go fix their own workflow. Because if it's breaking constantly on the Alteryx server, it's probably broken in Designer. And so I make them fix it. I'm not there to fix it. I'm there to tell them that they have a problem they probably won't notice. Because the only way they'll notice is if they notice the data's old. Right? Because the workbooks still work and the vizzes still render. And so this is something that they can oftentimes become blind to, is that they have stale data. And so I want to let them know that. So in this sort of area of data as a service, and I see that as my role in IT, I want to make sure they have visibility to what's happening with the data, but where appropriate, they have the ability and the skills to fix these workflows. I don't want to learn all of their workflows to fix them for them. And neither do they, for that matter. They want them to work. They're meaningful to their business. Okay. Moving on. How many people are having this discussion or have had this discussion internally? Okay. We have as well, and I get asked about it a lot. And so I want to have a really open and frank conversation about what this means to me and potential pitfalls in making some decisions around this thing. I will not tell you whether to do chargeback or not. That is an organizational decision. Okay? But I want to ask you a couple of questions. What's the point of your Tableau server? Ours is to get people to use it. It's self-service, right? So I'm going through all of the work I just went through because I want people to actually use it and self-serve and become self-reliant with data and analytics. All right? I want people to come over to my camp because I actually think that this is the right way to do things. So if we agree that our goal is to provide this platform and people to use it, what role does chargeback have in that goal? Now, this may be an older example, but I'll let you read that. AT&T, you are nearing your 200 message allowance for your bill cycle. Log into AT&T so you can buy more text messages. This has now changed from text messages to data. I got my AT&T, I've been traveling a lot, and I got my little notice yesterday. What's the first thing people do when they get this? They stop texting. When I got my you're almost out of data, I was like, okay, where's Wi-Fi? Like, I'm going to turn that on. I'm going to go find some sketchy Wi-Fi so I don't go over my data limit. Right? And so there is this balance between asking people to pay extra for something or having this idea of an overage, along with our goal being usage and utilization and adoption of this thing we've worked so hard to stand up. And so these are our sort of are the dance that we're asked to walk. Now, I've worked with a lot of customers, and I find those that get charged back the most right are the ones where the dollar amount is reasonable, but not exclusionary. We've had customers do $10 a user a year. Right? It's cheap, but it is actually money. Right? In that organization, you actually have to go through the process to request it, but it's nominal. Right? And so what it does is it creates, you have engaged people who actually care about the platform, but you're not disincenting them from using it. Now, they don't break even. Right? But they have people using their platform, and it actually transforms the way in which they're viewed within the organization. The other thing that you'll find with chargeback is you don't want to charge an early adopter penalty. You might not break even for the first couple of years. That first department with 30 people will not pay for your $300,000 Tableau server. Right? And then it's when you bring on 600 people that you're asking them to pay a fraction of what the early adopters paid. And so you've got this paradigm to deal with around the early adopters. They're the ones that are going to be your advocates when we don't want them to get penalized for that. Right? And so let's dig in a little bit deeper. What are our levers? What are the things we're allowed to monetize? So for example, number of data sources. Right? So I've seen customers say, you can have 15 data sources up on the Tableau server, or you can have extracts of a certain size. Right? I've seen number of projects. Right? You get this project, you get this project, and we'll put user quotas on the project. Now, you can also look at all of that monitoring and say, you guys get 30,000 views a week, but you don't actually have a throttle. Right? And that's not really understandable to the end user. They don't know that their one usage of that dashboard and where that is in context with the utilization. Same with resources, right? CPU. You're using 15% of the CPU, and so we're going to take the per core charge, and we're going to divide that by 15%, and we'll get your number so you can pay us. Right? Because when you ask people to pay, it has to be understandable to you. It also has to be understandable to them. And some of these things are not understandable to an end user, nor do they have visibility into how much CPU that they're using. So at Tableau, on Alpo, we don't do chargeback. And actually, as a company, we don't do cross-departmental charges. Okay? But at Tableau, we have a business that monetizes and does chargeback for Tableau Server. And it's called Tableau Online. And we've picked the easiest way, I think, and the most reasonable way to monetize and charge back, and that's by the user. Right? Tableau Online charges by the login. That's understandable to us. It's understandable to the user, and they can turn it on and off given their contract term. I've seen a lot of companies do it as a once a month or a monthly deal, right? Because then there's a project, the project goes away, I don't need my login anymore, and so if you're going to charge back, I find number of users to be one of the easiest to manage, one of the easiest things to throttle. Right? You have full control over how many people log into this thing. It's completely understandable to end user as well. I'd encourage you to keep it simple. Right? And what we've found on Tableau Online is that we have the people that are in there all the time banging away on the system. And they paid $500. We have people that go in twice a month, and they paid $500. And so from a platform standpoint, it all ends up coming out in the wash. And I want that person who is just wailing on Tableau Online actually to keep doing that. I want them engaged. They're going to help us drive adoption of this platform that we had. And that person that's logging on only 2 times a month, I actually want to find ways to get them more engaged. And then if I've got more engaged people, the value proposition for the platform and the hardware follows. Okay? So like I said, I can't tell you what to do in this area. I've seen people go completely sideways and try to monetize every little thing, and nobody uses their platform. Or worse, they will pay for one user and then use a script to do the get data command and just pull the data into Excel, and then you've lost all of this value that you've built to the organization. So again, if we agree that the goal is to get people to use Tableau Server, let's make sure that if we're monetizing that Tableau Server back to the end user, it doesn't directly disincent usage. And that's something to consider within your guys' organizations as we have within ours. So we've got about 13 minutes left. As you can see, I'm relatively candid about the stuff that we do and the stuff that we don't do. I'd be more than happy to answer almost any question that is around Tableau. Go ahead, Russ.
So what I'm hearing from our sales reps and any of the Tableau executives is that they're really pushing the move to the cloud. And I'm curious why you haven't done that, or if that's on the roadmap.
It is on the roadmap. So the question is we're hearing a lot about the cloud, even in the keynote, to paraphrase. Why isn't Alpo in the cloud? And that is changing. We have plans right now to take that Alpo dev installation, move it to Linux, and move it to AWS. Now, here's something you guys don't have to contend with, right? We are a release validation tool. So I can't get rid of on-prem, right? Because I want to be able to catch those defects for you guys, because not every one of our customers is going to go to the cloud. And so I'm in this weird position where I kind of got to run it all. But Alpo Dev we should see on Linux in AWS next year. So I'm just in this spot that you guys aren't, where I got to run it all.
Related to data as a service, do you guys have any white paper on security for web authoring?
Yeah, so the question is, in regards to data as a service, do we have any documentation on web authoring? We absolutely do. So what I'd like you to do is go to tableau.com/security. There's a white paper there and a hardening guide that allows you to know all the levers you have from a security standpoint, and then you can decide which ones you need to pull. So absolutely. Right in the back.
Is there anyone here that is charging internally, and are they doing that based on users or parts of the service?
So I'm going to repeat. So the recording's only on my mic, so I'm going to question that, and I'll kind of describe what's going on in the room. And it may be a conversation, a hallway conversation, right? So the question is anyone in the room doing chargeback internally, and what mechanism are they using? I've seen about 5 to 8 hands go up. And so for those on the recording, people in the room are doing that. Some are, some aren't. And that's a continuing discussion. So I think that's more of a hallway thing, if you don't mind, for the question. Yeah. Go ahead.
So as far as data as a service, and obviously data sources are evolving.
Sure. So the question is as these data models evolve, I'm going to paraphrase. As these data models evolve, how do we communicate to our user base those changes and those potential impacts? Right now, it's actually really hard. Right? I know which workbooks are using which data sources. Right? I know which data sources I'm changing. And I know via the repository who's the owner and the users of that workbook. What I don't know currently is which of those workbooks are using the field I'm changing. Right? And so right now my communication is, hey, we're changing this data source for the following reasons, and it's via email. These are the workbooks, and I'll actually send them a viz with links out to the Alpo location where they can make the change. Can you please check that your workbook is, if it's using this field, swap the new field, those types of things. So that being said, I don't know if I did one keynote yesterday and then there was the main keynote. We are putting impact analysis into the product and notification into the product in the near future to allow us to say, I'm going to make that change. I can make that change on Tableau Server, and I can email all of the users with the exact detail of what I just changed. So impact analysis is, I'd probably say like 60% good enough, and they're filling the gap in the next sort of dev cycle. So we're internally really excited about that. Yeah. Go ahead here in the aisle.
I had a question on the geo distribution of all the servers. So I didn't quite understand how do you make sure that Tableau server is connecting to the nearest geographical database?
Okay, so the question is on geography. How do we ensure that as we move content to new geographies, that it's being connecting to the data in those nearest geographies? Because that's really the payoff, right? So you saw, actually, Ben Lower last night in Devs on Stage showed this, but I thought he didn't actually highlight. That's actually the hard part that he glossed over, and that was the new document API. You can replace data sources with other data sources. And so when you take the downward motion of bringing stuff off of Alpo, you'd then call that simple little Python program to say, find all the Alpo DBs and change them to alpo-uk.db. And then on the republish, you're pointed to the local installation. So it's the document API is the thing that you need to dig into, and that's how you do it. So Ben actually showed that last night. There is all our APIs are under a portal called developers.tableau.com. And I'd encourage you to go there as well, where we have all of the web client, the document, the JavaScript libraries, all there fully documented. And so, but the one to search for to your question is the brand new document API. Go ahead.
Might be too specific. I'd be happy to discuss after the session, but there is a limitation right now on a server data source where you can't go across different data sources. How do you guys handle that?
So the question is around how do we handle going different data sources. I'd like to dig into your question a little bit harder. I'm not sure I've got enough to give you an answer there. Cool. Go here in front.
Yeah, so this is regarding best practices around setting up security models. Do you have any white paper on
Yeah, so the question is around best practices for setting up security models. And it's the tableau.com/security. We've got a best practices guide there. If you can't find it, let me know, but that's where it should be. Go ahead. I believe it's just Tableau, and then all of our open source projects are in there. Go ahead.
And then you had another dashboard where you said that vertically you had a system called something. So is that what did you create that yourself?
So the question is on some of the customized dashboards, did we create them ourselves? And the answer is absolutely.
And you have online I guess the database schema?
Yes, so the question is, do we have the database schema? I believe that's published now to the server admin community. And the workbook all of the workbook visualizations minus that Zabbix one is available on the Tableau server admin community. If you guys are your Tableau server admins, you gotta be there, because that's where my team is putting all of their stuff. And the dialogue that goes on there is really valuable. So if you're gonna do, you gotta be there. The question is for distribution, are we using 2016? I think we're using 2014. I think 2016's in the next month is for an upgrade, so we're just not there yet. Here in the aisle.
Are you using always on for availability?
I don't remember what we're using for avail. We have the F5 based load balancer that we're using to swap over in the event of a disaster. I'm trying to remember the technology we use for sort of the heartbeat to know if the server is up or not. And what we do is, I don't know the technology, but what we are doing is if it's non-responsive, we wait about 90 seconds before we flip so that we know we actually have a real failure rather than this getting a little bit too noisy. So you will have you'll pick, but you'll have a dead window in there. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
When do you reach for Alteryx?
So when do we reach for Alteryx? For us internally, it's when we have data that needs to be blended that we don't have data warehousing resources to do. We also do it for new applications we're bringing into the organization. So one of the things we find is like with a Workday, right? We use Tableau, or we use Alteryx to grab Workday data via their web service. We actually don't know what to build into a warehouse yet. But we get that access to the data, we build the visualizations, and we find out how we want to visualize the data and report out on it. And then that informs what we actually codify. So we're using it a lot for the rapid prototyping before we invest the data warehousing resources to make it a bigger, more robust thing. So it's been really valuable in that sort of dynamic. Go here in the back.
So you guys outlined a situation where you guys had multiple nodes, multiple servers, serving different purposes, processes, and stack. If you're in a situation where you have a smaller deployment that's mostly utilizing one server, do you have any guidance on benchmarks or, obviously you can run it 100% on your background process. That's not necessarily acceptable on a single server.
Sure. So the question is, hey Jeff, you've got a nice big server with some isolated resources, but what if I've got a single server deployment where they are in actually contention with one another? And so what I do is I try to match, because the backgrounders are driven based on schedules, I try my best to make my schedules at times when utilization is less. Right? And so in those single server installations, I have a little less flexibility to go doing midday full fat data refreshes, but I try to get those off hours. So in my usage curve, I try to stuff schedules into the valleys of that usage curve, and that helps me balance that out. But as you grow and you have both demands on the data side as well as the user side, that isolation does ultimately make sense. But if you're in a smaller deployment, I profile user activity, and then I try to stuff the schedules in the valleys of that curve. That's one of the ways that I manage for that. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, guys, so in the last 2 minutes, I'm going to ask a favor. If you can fill out how I did. Did you like the content? Did you like me? This is actually how we as internal employees get asked back to speak, because one of the things people love about our conferences is the content. And so we take it really seriously. So I'm asking a favor. If you could take a minute or two in your app to tell me what you thought about the session. You will not hurt my feelings. But all we're trying to do is make it better for you guys. And if there's anything else that we can do in the last day and a half, or depending 2.5 days of conference for you guys, just let us know. And like I said, I've been to every conference. I've been with Tableau for a while. The excitement is still the same, and I'm really happy that you guys are here. So have a great time tonight, and you will catch me on the Ferris wheel. There's a Ferris wheel at the party, so it's going to be sweet. All right, thanks, guys.